Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to pull out the key ideas from really fascinating sources for you.
And today we're diving into Liberation. It's the sixth book in that well-known André Luiz series brought through by Chico Xavier.
Right. Our mission today is to, really get a handle on the core ideas in this text about spiritual liberation, what the afterlife realms are supposedly like, and how spiritual help actually works, according to André Luiz.
It's definitely a text that offers perspectives that can challenge our everyday understanding of things like life, death, and how consciousness might be connected. It's a look into a reality most of us don't see.
Okay, let's start with a story from the book that really kind of sets the scene. It's this great little anecdote about a fish in a well.
Yes, the fish. It's quite illustrative.
So this fish lives happily in its well, knows nothing else, but then it finds this little drainage pipe. Curiosity gets the better of it, and it squeezes through.
And suddenly, its world expands. First a stream, then a river.
Exactly. Imagine the shock. New kinds of fish, flowing water. And then the river leads to the ocean. Just vast, unbelievable space. Something totally beyond its well-bound imagination.
It's such a clear parallel to our own often limited human viewpoint, isn't it? The well is like our narrow earthly perspective.
And the river and the ocean are these huge spiritual realities we just don't normally perceive.
Yeah. And the fish even meets a whale, something so enormous the entire well would just be a tiny snack for it.
It really drives home the scale, the sheer difference in realities. But then, and this is where it gets really interesting, the little fish feels this urge.
It has to go back.
It has to go back and tell the other fish in the well about this incredible ocean it's discovered.
Which is, of course, the classic challenge. How do you explain something so completely outside someone else's experience? It's almost impossible.
Totally. The other well fish, they just laugh at it, call it crazy, delusional. They insist their well is everything, the center of it all. Anything else is just fantasy.
They even bring up the god of the fishes to justify staying put in their limited world. It shows how belief systems can be used to reinforce limitation.
And the leader fish, the sovereign, even tries to stick its fin in the pipe, declares it impossible to get through, and says, "See, told you so." Just pure irony.
It's a perfect picture of that resistance to new ideas, isn't it? People get comfortable in their known world, even if it's limiting. The unknown is scary.
So the little explorer fish gets rejected, goes back to the ocean, makes a life in a coral palace, basically just waiting.
Waiting for reality to catch up with the others.
And it does. Years pass, a terrible drought hits, the well dries up completely.
And all the fish who stayed behind, complacent in their tiny world, they perish.
It's such a powerful metaphor. Our potential, the resistance we meet, and, well, the risks of staying stuck in limited thinking. It really primes you for the rest of the book.
Definitely sets the stage for exploring spiritual realities that are way beyond our normal day-to-day.
Okay, so keeping that fish and its well in mind, let's dive into the main discussions in Liberation. The story shifts pretty quickly to the spiritual world, specifically this big hall and some kind of educational place. What's going on there?
Right, so André Luiz and others are listening to a talk by a spirit minister named Flaccus. And the main topic is these things called purgatorial colonies.
Purgatorial colonies, what are they exactly?
They're described as organized places in the afterlife, structured environments designed for spirits who are still deeply caught up in negativity, a place for expiation and, hopefully, rehabilitation.
So going back to the fish analogy, if our daily lives are the well, what are some ways we might be like those well fish, limiting ourselves without realizing it?
Oh, that's a good question. I think fear of change is a big one. Just relying on what we've always known, tradition, not questioning assumptions. We build our own little mental wells, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And this group listening to Flaccus, they get a specific opportunity, don't they?
Yes, they do. They get to ask questions, but more significantly, they're allowed to go with an instructor, Gúbio, on a visit to one of these large expiatory centers.
And the purpose is?
The focus is very clear. It's about understanding what's happening there and ultimately figuring out how to help these, as the book calls them, ignorant brothers tormented in the shadows.
It's interesting how even in the spirit world, there's this need for organization, for structured help. The book mentions how earthly systems like politics or society aren't really enough for the needs of the imperishable being.
Exactly. Flaccus uses Pericles as an example. A great statesman, did amazing things for Greek education.
Right.
But even he couldn't really solve the underlying issues, like the tendency towards war, the desire for power. He apparently died quite distressed by it all.
So earthly structures have limits when it comes to deep spiritual issues.
That's the idea. They're important, but they don't get to the root of spiritual imbalance or conflict, which is why this restorative assistance in the spiritual realms is presented as so urgent, especially for large groups adjusting after death.
It sounds like there's a lot of collective suffering happening just beyond our view.
That's the picture painted, yes.
Yeah.
And requiring very dedicated, organized intervention. But there's also humility here.
How so?
These spiritual helpers, even the advanced ones, acknowledge they're still infinitely humble and imperfect compared to the vastness of creation, the millions of suns, the superior spirits. There's always more to learn, higher levels.
It reinforces that idea of ongoing evolution. And the book brings in quotes from Jesus and Paul to support the idea that non-physical beings are involved in human life.
Yes, references like Jesus saying, "My kingdom is not of this world," are used to show a spiritual reality operating on different principles.
And Paul's writings.
Paul talking about spiritual warfare, battling principalities, powers, spiritual hosts of wickedness, that's interpreted as directly pointing to the influence, good and bad, of discarnate intelligences on human affairs.
Okay, so after this discussion, André Luiz and Instructor Gúbio actually go on a journey. Where are they headed?
They start moving downwards, sort of towards the Earth's crust, with a key stop planned in one of these purgatorial colonies.
The goal being to see it firsthand.
Exactly. To observe the conditions, understand the dynamics of spiritual disharmony, and learn how assistance works or doesn't work in those environments.
And Gúbio, the instructor, emphasizes something important during this journey.
Yes, he talks about this huge network of helpers that gets mobilized whenever there's spiritual trouble on Earth, like cases of obsession. And it's all based on the principle of love, the kind Jesus exemplified.
So even one person's struggle can trigger a big response from the spiritual side.
That's the message. It highlights this deep interconnectedness and the constant effort from higher planes to offer help, driven by compassion.
Their travels then take them to a very different place, a gracious temple. What's special about it?
This temple is like a beacon of light. It's described as being dedicated to the materialization of sublime entities built up energetically over centuries by countless prayers.
So the atmosphere itself is powerful.
Yes, beautiful, filled with celestial music, vibrant spiritual flora. It's a haven created by positive spiritual energy, allowing for these higher manifestations.
And they witness a materialization there.
They do. A venerable woman, surrounded by emerald light, appears. She offers words of comfort, especially about reuniting with loved ones still on Earth.
What's her main message?
Hope, perseverance, the value of time as a gift, and the certainty of future reunions in a better state. It's about love enduring beyond physical separation.
Then we meet Gregorio, or rather, we hear about him and his spiritual mother. This seems important.
Very pivotal. Gregorio is presented as a spirit who's really stuck, resistant to hell, quite hardened. But his spiritual mother, she never gives up on him.
She has unwavering hope.
Completely. She sees his potential, comparing him to a lost pearl in mud. It illustrates this idea of divine magnetism, this fundamental connection, this love from the Creator that links all beings, no matter how far they seem to stray.
And how does the principle of sowing and reaping fit in here?
It's explained that spiritual gifts, like love or understanding, aren't just for us to keep. We're meant to share them, multiply them, like planting seeds. Our growth comes from giving out that love and compassion. Gregorio's mother knows her own progress is tied to helping him find his way back.
Okay, but then the journey shifts dramatically. They start heading downwards into much darker territory.
Yes, the transition is quite stark. They move through different assistance outposts, deeper and deeper into what's called a vast domain of shadows.
What's it like there?
The light is dim, gray fog everywhere, the air feels heavy, oppressive, even moving is hard. The plants look sinister and anguished, and there are cries coming from swamps. It sounds very bleak, almost like Dante's descriptions.
A huge change from the luminous temple.
Okay.
Do they feel it physically or spiritually?
Both. They describe feeling this physical heaviness, even a sense of their spiritual forms becoming distorted or disfigured, as if they're reconnecting to something dense and heavy like a physical body. It shows how much the environment impacts them.
Is there any kind of order or government in such a place? It sounds chaotic.
There is, but it's described as precarious, sort of allowed temporarily by higher powers. This specific region is currently run by a figure they call the Great Judge.
The Great Judge. Sounds ominous.
He is described as impious, leading a group of cruel associates, an aristocracy of implacable geniuses who rule over masses of tormented spirits.
Which inevitably brings up the idea of demons. Does the book explain them in a traditional way?
Not really. The instructor, Gúbio, clarifies that demons aren't separate evil beings.
Yeah.
It's what we become when we deliberately and persistently turn away from divine law, from good. It's an internal state, a deviation.
So it's about our own choices.
Exactly. And those who are more evolved might feel, weary or repulsed visiting these places, but they understand the need to serve, remembering they might have been in similar states themselves long ago.
As they go deeper, what specific things does André Luiz see? What kind of suffering?
He sees huge crowds living in decaying buildings, just miserable conditions. Many spirits are physically disfigured, mentally unbalanced, seemingly grouped together for shared negative experiences.
And this is common.
The book says millions find themselves like this after death, purely because of the negative mental states they cultivated while alive.
What about society there? Any structure?
They see some basic service organizations, but idleness seems dominant. And interestingly, no children are seen, only what are called dwarf races, suggesting stunted spiritual growth.
But there are also palaces.
Yes. Strangely, amidst the misery, there are these elaborate palaces shining with kind of ablazed clarity like ancient Eastern cities, and a temple dedicated to a very showy, spectacular external cult.
So outward appearances hiding inner decay.
Seems like it. A lot of superficiality masking the real problems.
Given all this darkness and distortion, how does the book suggest help actually reaches these spirits? What are the mechanisms for liberation?
Well, it emphasizes that individual effort is key. A spirit has to want to change. But the power of love and compassion from helpers, like we see later with Mathilde, is crucial to break through that darkness and offer guidance when someone is ready.
Okay, then there's this mention of selective operations in a special hexagonal building. What's that about?
Right. This building is described as lit up like a burning house. Inside, these selective operations take place. The idea presented is that even after death, you tend to associate with spirits who are on your wavelength, like attracts like.
So you choose your company based on your inner state.
Essentially, yes. And positions of power, even in this dark realm, are held by those who actively want and seek them, regardless of their morality.
But that sounds strange for a place meant for rehabilitation. Why would that be allowed?
It seems to tie back to free will. Spirits retain the ability to associate based on their affinities. It creates this complex environment where they are both influenced by and contribute to the overall vibration.
And the scene inside this building sounds grim.
Very. Victims gathered like livestock, overseen by mocking guards. Then these magistrates arrive, dressed like ancient Roman lictors, carried in on litters for some kind of fake religious ceremony.
What kind of justice do they dispense?
It's portrayed as a warped version. The judge declares the place doesn't punish or reward conventionally. Death itself is the path to justice, based on your mental archives, your life's record, basically. And he condemns anyone who defies their rulings. It's rigid, unforgiving.
They use magnetic power to force a confession, too.
Yes, from a woman. It's shown as a demonstration of the principle. Where we place our thought, there our own life will develop. They manipulate her mind with focused energy to get what they want.
Highlighting how powerful thoughts are, even there.
Extremely. And how that power can be misused. They also use a crystalline instrument, apparently.
What does that do?
It assesses groups by reading the colors and vibrations of their vital aura, their spiritual energy field. But it has limits. It can't register spirits who've already moved on to higher levels. It only works on those within these lower planes.
And they claim to do all this in the name of the government of the world.
They do, but the book clarifies this refers only to the government of this specific, lower, denser spiritual plane. It's not the true, higher divine governance.
A reminder that authority can be claimed falsely, even in the afterlife.
Just like on Earth, yes. Great crimes have been committed invoking divinity.
Then we get the concept of second death and these ovoids. Can you explain those?
Okay. Second death is described as something that happens to spirits who ascend to much, much higher planes. It involves losing the paraspiritual vehicle, the energy body we've been talking about. It signifies a major transformation.
And the ovoids.
Those are seen in the streets of these lower realms. They're described as these forms of depressing abnormality, like spirits who've lost their human-like form, becoming almost egg-shaped or indistinct.
Why? What happens to them?
Their minds lost in fixed, obsessive ideas. They've lost touch with higher values, fallen into a kind of spiritual apathy or relaxation, and their energy bodies degenerate as a result. They look like severe mental patients.
That sounds incredibly bleak. The landscape is desolate, cries are heard. How can anyone even help in a city full of thousands of these declared lunatics.
It highlights the immense difficulty. Individual help seems almost impossible on that scale. It's a picture of self-perpetuating negativity cycles. The Instructor Gúbio being there at all is presented as a huge act of service and sacrifice.
The journey continues into the valley of suffering. What's that like?
Even worse, if possible. A vast valley filled with suffering that's hard to imagine. The sounds are described as a horrible mix of human and animal cries. Pain and anguish are almost tangible.
But there are helpers even there.
Yes, the instructor confirms that consoling companions do exist in these purgatorial places, but for this study, they're focusing on observing the conditions. And they encounter spirits totally consumed by vengeance.
What's the consequence for those spirits?
Because they're so focused on hatred, they've literally burned through their own spiritual energy, their paraspirit. And in their despair, they become magnetically attached to the very people they hate.
Trapping themselves further.
Exactly. It perfectly illustrates that idea. The science of loving is the science of liberating. Hate just binds you tighter to suffering.
And this is where they meet Gregorio again.
Yes, they encounter him in this valley. He's radiating darkness, surrounded by followers who kneel to him. He's still deep in his negativity, wielding distorted power. Any attempt to help him directly at this point is useless.
He's just not ready.
Not at all. His mindset is completely resistant.
Okay, then the focus shifts. They visit a seemingly normal, comfortable home, but witness an unexpected spectacle. What's happening to the woman living there, Margarita?
She's the target of intense spiritual obsession. While she sits meditating, tormented, they see the invisible reality. Two terrifying spiritual entities performing magnetic operations on her.
Magnetic operations.
Yes, and worse, dozens of those ovoid bodies are attached to her brain with fine, subtle threads, constantly draining her vital energy.
Wow. That sounds incredibly insidious.
It's described as a very calculated, technically organized siege, different from obsessions driven purely by raw, explosive passion. This is methodical.
They even follow her and her husband to a Catholic church. What did they observe there?
It's fascinating. They see a clear division of energies. The altars, the sacred items, they emanate light from centuries of sincere prayer. But the lower parts of the church are heavy with dark, disturbed energies from ignorant spirits hanging around.
So both light and dark coexist there.
Yes. And celestial messengers are present, distributing spiritual help, but only to those whose minds are aligned to receive it. However, there's a twist with the priest himself.
Oh.
The priest conducting the Eucharist is described as an atheist, and his own dark thoughts and emanations actually negate the light during the service, preventing higher blessings from reaching the congregation effectively through him.
That's quite a statement about the importance of the individual's inner state, even in religious leaders.
Absolutely. It permeates the whole book. Inner state is paramount.
Back at Margarita's home, her suffering continues, and we meet one of her tormentors, Saldana. Why is he doing this?
He revealed his motive is revenge. He feels his son was grievously wronged years ago, falsely accused, imprisoned, and he blames people connected to Margarita's family, perhaps from past lives or associations. His bitterness is immense.
And again, the instructor, Gúbio, doesn't jump in with lectures.
No, his approach is more about observing, understanding the deep roots of the problem, showing compassion even for the tormentor. It's complex.
It's an attempt to help via a doctor.
Yes, a spiritual suggestion is given to a physician treating Margarita, prompting him to recommend spiritism to her husband as a possible avenue for help.
Does it work?
Unfortunately, no. The husband isn't mentally open to it. He can't receive the idea. It just bounces off.
Which reinforces that need for inner receptivity. You can't force help on someone.
Precisely. And this leads to the point that our thoughts and actions literally shape our spiritual form, our soul, leaving marks. And the husband's resistance highlights why meditation is suggested as so important.
Why meditation specifically?
It's presented as the way to quiet the mental noise, raise your own vibration, and actually create an inner space where positive influences can reach you. Without that inner work, people remain stuck in negative loops and vulnerable.
The book then gives a couple more examples, right?
Yeah.
A police investigator and a family karma situation.
Yes, briefly. The investigator is tormented by remorse, showing how guilt and negative thoughts can erode mental and physical health. The other case involves a grandmother, granddaughter, and vengeful spirits from a past wrongdoing, illustrating complex karmic links and how external fixes often fail without inner change.
Then the focus shifts to mediumship itself.
Yeah.
With Donna Isora Silva. She has a bright aura during sessions.
Yes, when she's actively working, connecting with higher guides, her aura is bright. But afterwards,
It changes.
dramatically. Dark emanations appear, showing she's being influenced by negative entities drawn to her own unresolved issues, like jealousy.
So mediums aren't automatically protected.
No. Another spirit helper, Sidonio, explains mediums can be channels giving and receiving. But if they return to their own negative patterns when not working, they become vulnerable again. Izara is even shown actively avoiding spiritual help because her own negative state makes her resist it.
It really emphasizes the medium's personal responsibility for their own state of mind.
Hugely important. The quality of the connection depends heavily on the medium's own vibration.
But then things start to shift. At another location, Gabriel's home, suffering spirits start showing up, but these seem different.
Yes, they are suffering, but described as well-intentioned. They're actively seeking help. It indicates a positive change in the spiritual atmosphere around them, maybe due to the helper's presence or prayers.
A turning point. And even some of Gregorio's followers start seeking change.
That's right. Some from his group express weariness, a desire for something better. One even begs for salvation from the cruel judges in their realm.
And other examples of suffering are shown.
Yes, a man tormented by a character he created in his own licentious writings, showing how our creations can haunt us. And a young woman desperate for oblivion after losing her children, just wanting to escape the pain.
It shows the diverse forms suffering takes.
And the deep yearning for release.
This leads to a special night meeting led by Gúbio. What's the focus?
Forgetting past mistakes, cultivating hope. He tells the group that helping even one soul can ripple outwards, bringing relief to many. And he stresses maintaining a higher moral ground to receive blessings from above.
And then he prays.
Yes, a very powerful prayer. The result is described as a rain of diamond rays falling upon the whole group.
Diamond rays, what does that symbolize?
Intense spiritual light, grace, purification, healing. A massive influx of positive energy from the higher planes, leading to widespread emotional release and tears among the suffering spirits.
A moment of profound blessing. And during this, Mathilde materializes again, Gregorio's mother.
Yes, the venerable, beautiful Mathilde appears. She gives a powerful message.
What does she emphasize?
The immense value of physical life not as an escape, but as a precious chance for real growth. She warns against just wanting to reincarnate to forget pain. Instead, she urges directing desires towards infinite good.
And the journey of life.
She talks about how the incarnate journey is fundamentally solitary in terms of inner work. We have to face our own inner struggles, overcome destructive impulses ourselves, to achieve true spiritual progress. No one can do it for us.
That's a strong message. Then the focus turns back to Margarita, the obsessed woman.
Right. Margarita appears semi-conscious. Mathilde uses magnetic passes on her.
Why? What's the effect?
To awaken her mental centers. Mathilde explains the physical incarnate state is almost like a form of hypnosis due to the body's lower vibrations. The passes help Margarita wake up spiritually, become more aware.
And does Margarita respond?
Yes, she gradually awakens, connects emotionally with Mathilde, expressing her deep unhappiness and weariness.
What comfort does Mathilde offer?
She urges Margarita to find strength not just for herself, but in helping others. To find purpose beyond her own pain. She talks about balancing human needs with spiritual aspirations.
And Margarita asks for guidance for her future child.
Yes, a touching moment. She pleads with Mathilde, her spiritual mother figure, for help in raising her child with spiritual awareness. It shows a significant shift towards healing and future hope.
Okay, so the narrative is building towards the climax, the confrontation with Gregorio.
Exactly. The group prepares to ascend, taking the spirits they've helped with them, but they know they'll likely encounter Gregorio and his followers.
How do they prepare?
With prayer focusing on understanding and forgiveness, not conflict, they need to maintain their high vibration.
And Gregorio arrives.
He does, full of arrogance. He taunts the instructor, Gúbio, who appears symbolically prostrate or humble. Gregorio mocks the idea of a merciful God.
But then Mathilde steps in.
Yes. She makes this incredibly powerful emotional plea directly to Gregorio. She reveals their deep past connection. She was his spiritual mother. She begs him to abandon his path of darkness and suffering.
How does Gregorio react to her?
It hits him hard. First disbelief, maybe fear. But her words, filled with pure love, start to penetrate his defenses. He's described as being magnetized by her plea.
And then she fully materializes.
Yes, she stands before him radiant and declares her only weapon, her only sword, is love.
Wow. And the result?
It breaks him. That unconditional love finally reaches the lost pearl within. In a truly powerful moment, Gregorio recognizes her, falls to his knees, and calls her mother.
And she embraces him.
She does. It's this incredible moment of reconciliation, light overcoming darkness, love winning out, a real triumph.
That scene feels like the heart of the book's message, doesn't it? The ultimate power of love to redeem.
Absolutely. It suggests that no one is truly beyond hope, and that persistent, unconditional love is the most powerful force for transformation, even against seemingly insurmountable darkness.
So wrapping this up, what are the big takeaways from this deep dive into liberation?
Well, it really paints a picture of the sheer complexity of the spiritual realms, both high and low. It details these processes of obsession and liberation, showing how intertwined they are with our own thoughts and actions.
And the importance of inner work.
Absolutely paramount. Inner transformation is key. And overlying everything is the incredible power of love, compassion, forgiveness. These are presented as the ultimate tools for healing and redemption. It shows there are always chances for growth.
Going back to that little fish in the well one last time. It feels like this dive gave us a peek into that vast spiritual ocean, far beyond our usual perspective.
Definitely. It challenges those well walls we might build around our own understanding of reality. It encourages looking beyond the immediate and considering a much bigger picture.
Which leads to a final thought for everyone listening. What dark wells of thought, maybe habits or fixed beliefs, might be limiting your perception of a wider, more liberating reality? And what small cracks of curiosity or maybe aspiration could be your opening towards a greater understanding?
That's a great question to ponder.
Something to reflect on.
Yeah.
We hope this exploration of liberation has given you some rich food for thought about life, the afterlife, and your own spiritual journey.